So to recap at this point, the first thing you want to do is measure your window. And you don't necessarily want to just measure it all around to get a total. You want to specifically know how much is the top and bottom, how wide is the top and bottom, and then how wide is each side. Top and bottom will be the same dimension, the side and side will be the same dimension, and then you look at that individually. It's always going to be one of two situations. It's either going to be a light bulb starts in the middle and then symmetrically goes out from there, or you're going to have a hang point in the middle and then 6 inches on either side of that you're going to have a light bulb. It's always going to be one of those two things. What you need to figure out though is you need to figure out those dimensions first so you can figure out what you're going to have to do on this corner, how much extra you're going to have. You want to have extra, you don't want it to be really tight, because remember, in order to keep those light bulbs straight, you have to put in a hang point, and then you have to stretch these out and put in another hang point and then tie wrap it. So you need a little bit of extra wire here at the corners just to play with and allow you to keep the light straight. Some of the other things you want to think about is, you know, the bulbs are not going to be pointing straight out. They're going to be probably laying to the side, so it's going to be more like, you know, like that, where the bulbs kind of lay out. When you do this, it's easy to see what you're going to do here. You can easily imagine the bulbs hanging down on this side. But then what about the top? Are the bulbs going to be pointing straight up? You can do that, but the bulbs like that are going to have a tendency sometimes to want to get weighed down and swing down like this. So you know, just be aware of that. You're going to need to either put in extra hardware in order to keep it up, or you're going to shift your hang point a little higher so that you can then let the bulbs hang down, right? But then the bulb themselves is at the same relative spot that these are in. So what I mean by that is where it lands on the brick mold. So let's look at just the top brick mold and the bottom brick mold. If you got a bulb hanging like this, right, you can see the bulb is kind of lined up with the outside edge of the brick mold. Well, then if you were to hang it up above, you almost need to hang it here so that bulb also lands on the outside edge of the brick mold. Now, even though they're both hanging down, it's where the light bulb itself lands that really matters. Now the problem with this here is, of course, is that this brick mold is usually out a few inches from the actual siding. So I'm just going through this to go over the theory. What I have found in my travels is that actually you can set the light bulbs up inverted like this, but you're just going to have to play with it, and you'll have to do a lot of twisting of the wire whenever you attach it to make sure that the wire is pulling the light bulb up, straight up, and holding it straight up in the air. Another important thing to think about is how the hardware goes into the corners, because, you know, let's take a close-up look at these mitered corners. A mitered corner means it's this 45-degree angle thing, as opposed to, you know, I suppose it could be like this, to where it's just a straight piece of wood butted up against another one, but that's never how windows are put up. They always use mitered corners. And of course what that really means for you is that you can't put a mounting hardware right there in the middle between two pieces of wood. So what you're going to almost always end up with, what I always end up with, is somewhere just to this side of the line, and then somewhere just to this side of the line is where you will have your mount points. So again, you got to think of this as there's 4 different sides, top, bottom, left, and right, and each one sort of has its own individual strand that needs to be stretched out and attached in order to maintain symmetry. Let's take another look at this brick mold. If this was a piece of brick mold in here like this, if we were to take it out and then spin it this way so you're looking at it on edge, I would call that the cross-sectional view. You would see something like this. This is the part that's down into the siding, but on the outside it usually has some sort of fancy design. So if I was to draw this back up here, what you do is you see a series of ridges here and here, because it's not just a straight piece of wood. It kind of goes up and it has these ridges here to make it look fancy. I like to use those ridges to my advantage. I always put my screw in along one of those ridges. I'll just choose one of the ridges and that will be my reference point, because you always want the screws to be the same distance from the edge. If you got a screw here, then a screw there, then a screw up there, and a screw down there, the light bulbs get wavy. But if instead, I'll show you on this side, if you're putting the screw in the same distance from this edge each time, that's what's going to keep the wire straight and the light straight. And the way I do it is I look for one of these ridges and I just make sure that I keep the screw screwed into the same ridge line all the way around the window. That's how you make sure you keep the line straight.